everybody, it's high treason here. I don't usually film in this room, do I? Oh well, who cares? We're going to have a look at the Xigmatek Utgard case today. I did mention it some videos earlier, in fact, might have taken a glimpse of it. It's very windy outside, so excuse that. And excuse my hiccuping. Yes, the case is down here, so let's take a look. And unless things have changed drastically since I got mine, yours should arrive in a box a lot like this. Now, most cases come in crappy boxes, and the box means nothing to me. It will have polystyrene, however I've removed that for convenience sake. Once you've removed the case, you should find that it has a protective plastic film on the front, which will pull off to annoy people who leave those on. Useless fan controllers, which are just potentiometers with no real circuitry at all. These are burned out Esata Ports that are very flimsy. You can see they move around, and that is if the cable at the back of here doesn't break off, or in fact if the whole top panel doesn't come off. This piece here is for a radiator, and it slides off like so. But I've not seen a radiator that will fit that small that is even worth bothering with. Haven't even seen any made. Cables get in the way of the CD drive, and so would the radiator's pipes. On top of that, that's at the top, so you'd have an option with that proprietary sized fan there. You better hope that doesn't fail, and it probably will because the blades aren't quite straight and it will rattle itself to death. Is that if you have an option, you can pull heat up out of the case to go through the radiator and warm whatever you're running the radiator to, or you can blow the hot air from the radiator down into the case. I'm not qualified in thermodynamics to any extent, however I know that this design simply will not work. The case comes with thumb screws in the back, and I don't like these because anybody who's competent with a computer should not have to open the case enough to see any advantage in those. Really I'd like to have a key lock, but there's no option for it. Not a key lock, but a case lock, and there's no option for it on this one. The case clips never seem to work properly. As you can see, that panel has got itself stuck in there, and I've just bent it because it's very thin and flimsy metal. So, and it's not really a very nice colour, but that's the only colour it comes in, this kind of flat black. Looks like hammerite. Inside you get a manual, a box with mostly things I don't understand in there. I have no idea. Well, that's useful, we'll use that. The LEDs on the front will blind you though, so we don't want those. They're too bright. I don't know what these are for. They look like something out of my refrigerator actually. Those, again, I don't know what they're for. They have a thread on them. It's plastic, so it'll break off if you screwed it into anything. Not unlike, I don't know what those are. What are those? I think it says there's something for the radiator. I don't understand personally. Wouldn't those reduce that space even more? You get a manual, it has dimensions, and it tells you about the mounting mechanisms. Now, the mounting mechanisms are rather questionable, because this is the hard drive cage. This is £20. The one that comes in the case comes with a fan mounted in the front, but I have taken that out, and I did try to use it somewhere else, but ended up throwing it out of the window. But you might notice my hard drive moves around a little bit, and that's because it isn't screwed in. What you have instead of screws are these rubber grommets. Now, if you try to put a screw through those, they are too thick for a screw to reach. And if I could get hard drive screws that length, they'd be useful, because I've got a case that requires those, which currently has no screws in it. If you take these out, the hole is too large to use a screw, so the screw will go straight through the hole. So you will have your hard drives rattling around in there, annoying everybody, and if you tip the case backwards, it falls out. I broke 2 hard drives when I was trying to use this case. That fan mount is plastic and will probably break like that if you try to mount any fan in there and then take it out later, so that is completely useless. Now the hard drive tray obviously is no good because everything in this is a 5-inch base, so it slides in, but that's rather awkward and you will scratch it doing that, so if you cared about the look of the case, that would be horrible. And it looks like I've left a CD drive in, but these are the only things to hold drives in, and they don't appear to work unless the drive is in a very specific place. I can't push that forward anymore, but I can pull it backwards. So how it got stuck in there is because I tried to press eject and that happened. So these things are completely useless. I now have that back, and we can now look at another issue I have with this case. You can't get these out without breaking them. You have to bend the metal, and the same kind of goes for those, so you will never get anything out of there. Internally, those fan controls, that's 3 fans per controller, so you're definitely going to melt those potentiometers like I have. The case does still have a smell to it. That is a very tight fit for the back plane. Nothing has screws, and it's not like you can take these out and use them, because that gets in the way of the screw hole, and those holes aren't even threaded, so you will have to use these. I was running a GeForce 4 Ti 4600 in here, which has a big copper heatsink on it. The whole heatsink's copper. Probably cost a lot of money when it was new, and it broke one of those, and that's why one of them is missing, because of how heavy it was and how much strain the heavy DVI cables put on the back of it. That card does use 2 slots, but it only has 1 hole. It's probably one of the first cards to use 2 slots. The back plate for the motherboard isn't removable. I don't know what the purpose of that hole is, given that the back of the motherboard would be there. But it is insulated, and I discovered that the motherboard could not use the screw holes as ground. However, I took care of that and run a line to all of them, which I then bolted to the power supply, which mounts in the wrong place. So unless you've got an exceptionally long cable for it, given that the ATX standard has the power connector up here somewhere, and on my server motherboard it's about there. In fact, the fan got in the way of it and I had to remove that. You will have to buy an extension cable because most power supplies won't reach. However, I had one that did if I didn't screw it in, and every motherboard I tried in here, I've tried about 5, randomly resets the computer, and it didn't matter what power supply I used. In fact, I sat one on top of here and moved an entire system in, the power supply included, that was working. I thought it was broke and was about to chuck everything out, all of these motherboards and these power supplies. Discovered running them out of the case, everything worked fine, and in fact I could put them in a different case and they worked fine there. Hence I took one out of a case and tested it in here, and it did the same thing, and I can only conclude that it's probably magnetic interference or something. I don't know, but nothing wants to work in this case. So yeah, it's very easy to scratch. And that's about that. Excuse any poor editing that just occurred, but these nuke symbols and the fans behind them are not standard. Those were bought cheaply on eBay for another machine and just ended up attached to this one. Well, there's no denying that this case and its design is full of problems, and to be honest, they make me want to throw it out of a window. Hey, you know, this room might have its advantages. Oh dear, I wonder how that happened. Yeah, to make matters worse with this model, it is a bit of an awkward fit in the UK standard size. Well, the 1993 standard size of rubbish bin, which is a little bit disappointing. They've made the bin smaller since, and I'm not even sure we're supposed to chuck it in household waste. However, I will gladly pay the fines, and that fan is spinning its last little summer in there. Now, it does indeed fit, just. You know, I almost forgot something. There was optional accessories for this case. Optional accessory, £50 mesh side panel. Garbage. That's where it belongs. I'm High Treason, I'll see you later.